In 2015, he was offered a blank check to be the face of Russian hockey.
Лучший русский игрок НХЛ был когда-то.
Instead, he signed a cheap entry-level contract to be a nobody in America. This is the raw, unfiltered story of how Artemi Panarin ran away from a fortune to chase a dream and ended up with both. In the spring of 2015, Artemi Panarin was on the top of the Russian hockey world. He was a 23-year-old star, a key player who had just helped the powerhouse SKA St. Petersburg team to a Gagarin Cup championship. He was a hero, and the KHL was prepared to make him a very rich man to stay. Lucrative long-term contracts were laid at his feet, offering him a life of comfort and security in his home country. But Panarin had a different plan. On April 29, 2015, he shocked the Russian hockey world by turning his back on that guaranteed fortune. He signed a cheap 2-year entry-level contract with the Chicago Blackhawks. He was taking a massive financial risk, running away from a secure future to take a minimum-level deal in a league that had never given him a second glance. He was a complete unknown, heading to a new country where he spoke no English, all for a chance to prove something to himself. To understand why a man would walk away from millions, you have to understand the place he came from. Panarin was born in 1991 in Korkina, a small, bleak industrial town on the edge of Siberia. It was a place of extreme poverty, a coal mining town often described as an environmental disaster zone choked with pollution. It was a tough place to grow up, a town with very little opportunity, high crime, and widespread alcoholism. His own family life was unstable from the start. His parents divorced when he was just 3 months old. His mother, who was only 20, and his father were largely absent as they struggled to find work in the harsh post-Soviet economy. From infancy, Panarin was raised almost entirely by his maternal grandparents. His grandfather, Vladimir Levin, became the central figure in his life. Vladimir, a former amateur hockey player himself, saw a spark in his young grandson, and he made a choice. He would dedicate his entire life to fueling that spark. He became Panarin's father figure, his mentor, his coach, and his biggest supporter. In a town where so many kids fell through the cracks, Vladimir was a relentless force of stability and discipline. The sacrifices were immense. His grandfather brought Panarin his first pair of skates and would often buy him food when the family had none. The local rink in Korkina was in terrible condition, so Vladimir would drive his grandson 25 miles each way multiple times a week in a rundown old car to a better hockey school in the city of Chelyabinsk. This was a huge financial and personal burden, a gamble of time and money on a little kid's dream. Panarin would later say, with full certainty, "My grandfather is the most important person in my life. He did everything for me. He took me to practice. Without him, I would be nothing. I would probably still be in Korkina, drinking beer on a bench." This was the chip on Panarin's shoulder. He wasn't just playing for himself. He was paying to repay his grandfather's incredible sacrifice. But the path to the NHL wasn't easy. Despite his emerging skill in Russia, he was consistently overlooked by NHL scouts. He was eligible for the NHL entry draft in both 2010 and 2011 and was passed over by all 30 teams multiple times. He was labeled as too small, too frail, and a perimeter player whose skills wouldn't translate to the smaller, rougher North American ice. He was, in the eyes of the world's best league, a reject. He began his pro career in the KHL with Vityaz Chekhov, a team that was notoriously known as the goon squad of the league, famous more for its brawlers than its skill. For a small, skilled player like Panarin, it was a brutal environment. He had to learn to survive, to use his quickness to avoid being destroyed by his own teammates in practice, let alone by opponents. His career finally took off when he was traded to the powerhouse SKA St. Petersburg, where he was placed on a line with former NHL superstar Ilya Kovalchuk. He blossomed, becoming a true star and a Gagarin Cup champion. By 2015, he had finally achieved the secure, rich life he had been working towards. He could have stayed in Russia, been the face of a franchise, and cashed in. But the sting of being undrafted, of being told he wasn't good enough for the NHL, still lingered. He wasn't just playing for money, he was playing to prove a point. And that's why, at 23 years old, he made his first great runaway, betting on himself and leaving millions on the table for a shot at the unknown. He had taken the biggest gamble of his life, arriving in a new country with no guaranteed spot and speaking no English. Now he had to prove he wasn't just a KHL star, but that he belonged with the best in the world. When Artemi Panarin landed in Chicago in the summer of 2015, he was a complete unknown. He was 23 years old, walking away from a massive contract in his home country, all for a cheap 2-year entry-level deal that didn't even guarantee him a spot on the team. The Blackhawks were a modern dynasty, just months away from winning their 3rd Stanley Cup in 6 seasons. Their roster was stacked with superstars. Panarin wasn't just joining a new team, he was trying to crack one of the best lineups in the entire NHL. The challenges were immediate and overwhelming. He spoke almost no English, isolating him from his new teammates and coaches. He had to navigate a new city, a new culture, and a new style of hockey on the smaller North American ice, all while carrying the immense pressure of his financial gamble. If he failed, if he got cut and sent to the minor leagues, he would have thrown away a fortune for nothing. But the Blackhawks coaching staff, led by Joe Quenneville and his new superstar teammate Patrick Kane, saw the raw skill he possessed.
You know what, he's very skilled player. You know, for the people that don't get to see him much, you're going to be very entertained when you watch him play. He's got great hands, great shot.
In a move that would change the landscape of the league, the coaches decided to put the unknown Russian rookie on a line with their American superstar. The chemistry was instant and spectacular. Panarin, who could barely communicate with Kane verbally, developed what Kane would later call the hockey language. They just understood each other on the ice. Panarin's elite vision and lethal shot perfectly complemented Kane's brilliant playmaking. The undrafted runaway wasn't just keeping up, he was dominating. He earned the nickname the Bread Man.
Coach Quenneville, because my last name really close with Panera Bread, so he just say Bread Man and everybody doing that.
He was quickly becoming a fan favorite. His rookie season was one of the greatest by an undrafted player in modern history. He played with creativity and confidence that was shocking for a first-year player. He finished the season with 30 goals and 47 assists for 77 points, finishing in the top 10 in the entire league in scoring. He didn't just make the team, he was one of their best players. At the end of the season, the choice was obvious. Panarin won the Calder Memorial Trophy as the NHL's Rookie of the Year, beating out other highly touted rookies like Connor McDavid. The kid from the polluted mining town of Corkina, the player every team had passed on in the draft, was now officially the best rookie in the world. His gamble had paid off. He followed it up with another great season, proving he was no fluke. He had found a home. But this is where his story takes its next turn. After just 2 seasons in Chicago, the Blackhawks were facing a severe salary cap crunch. Panarin's entry-level deal was up, and he was due a massive raise, a raise the team could simply not afford. On June 23, 2017, in a move that stunned the hockey world, Panarin was traded to the Columbus Blue Jackets. He was once again being forced to move, a victim of his own success. He had proven he was an elite player, but now he had to do it all over again in a new city, this time without Patrick Kane by his side. His superstar performance in Chicago had earned him a massive payday and a one-way ticket out of town. Now, traded to Columbus, he faced a new challenge, proving to the world he wasn't just Patrick Kane's sidekick. His arrival in Columbus was his chance to silence that last doubt for good. When Artemi Panarin arrived in Columbus for the 2017-18 season, he wasn't a rookie hoping to make the team anymore. He was a 26-year-old star, the centerpiece of a major trade, and he was expected to be the engine of the Blue Jackets offense. He was finally the #1 guy, the franchise player, and he did not disappoint. Any doubts that he was just a product of Patrick Kane were immediately erased. Panarin was dominant. He played with a confidence and creativity that Columbus had never seen before. He finished his first season with a new franchise record 82 points, carrying the team to the playoffs. He proved he was an elite driver of offense on his own.
Just a great pro. One of the hardest working guys on our team. One of the hardest guys, I think, in the National Hockey League on pucks and one-on-one battles.
He followed that up with an even better season in 2018-19. He broke his own franchise record, posting 87 points and leading the Blue Jackets to the most shocking playoff upset in recent memory, a 4-game sweep of the 62-win Tampa Bay Lightning, one of the most dominant regular season teams in NHL history. Panarin was the hero of Ohio, a superstar who had elevated the entire franchise. The Blue Jackets and their GM, Jarmo Kakalainen, were desperate to keep him.
And he's a great pro. He's a good example to all the young guys as well, how he handles his business every day.
They offered him a blank check, a massive 8-year contract extension that would have made him the face of the franchise for the next decade. But in a move that stunned the hockey world for the second time, Panarin refused. He wouldn't even negotiate.
And I hope that they want to stay. They're happy in Columbus. They want to stay. We have a good team.
He had decided once again to bet on himself. He wanted to test the open market of free agency, a right he had earned. This was the second runaway of his career. He played out the entire 2018-19 season as a lame duck, a player everyone in the building knew was leaving. It was an awkward and tense situation, but Panarin still played his heart out, leading the team on that incredible playoff run. The fans in Columbus felt betrayed, but Panarin had his eyes on a bigger prize. On July 1st, 2019, his gamble paid off. Panarin signed a massive 7-year, $81.5 million contract with the New York Rangers. His $11.64 million average salary made him one of the highest-paid players in the entire NHL. The undrafted kid from Corkina, the KHL runaway, was now the king of New York. He had reached the absolute peak of his profession. But it was at this peak, just days after signing his life-altering contract, that Panarin made a decision that had nothing to do with hockey. A decision that was brave, dangerous, and would eventually lead to his rock bottom. In a candid interview back in Russia, he did the unthinkable. He openly criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin. In a country where athletes are expected to be silent patriots, Panarin spoke his mind. He said he no longer believed Putin knew what is right and wrong, and called the regime lawless. It was a shocking act of defiance. For the next year and a half, Panarin was the toast of New York, a Hart Trophy MVP finalist who seemed untouchable. But the regime he had criticized had not forgotten. In February 2021, the hit job came. A fabricated story suddenly surfaced in a pro-Kremlin Russian newspaper. Panarin's former KHL coach, Andrei Nazarov, a vocal Putin supporter, claimed that back in 2011, Panarin had assaulted an 18-year-old girl in a hotel bar in Latvia. The allegation was immediately and forcefully denied by Panarin and the New York Rangers. The team released a powerful statement, calling it a fabricated story and a political intimidation tactic being used against him for his outspoken political comments. This was Panarin's true rock bottom. The allegation itself was serious, but the implications were terrifying. It was a clear threat. Panarin was deeply distressed, not for himself, but for the safety of his family still living in Russia. He was unable to focus on hockey, his mind a world away. The political machine he had dared to criticize was now trying to crush him. He was forced to take an indefinite leave of absence from the team to deal with the stress and ensure his family's safety. He missed 9 games. The runaway star had finally been stopped in his tracks by a force much bigger than hockey. Alright, quick breather. If you're enjoying this and not just scrolling for highlights, hit that subscribe button. Don't make it weird. And if you really want to back the boys, hit join and hop on the Skates and Scarves crew. Appreciate you. Now let's get back to it before someone misses another open net. The political hit job was designed to silence him, to break his spirits. It did the exact opposite. Artemi Panarin returned to the New York Rangers lineup after his 2-week leave of absence, not as a broken or intimidated player, but as a man who seemed more determined than ever. The attempt to smear his name and threaten his family had failed to derail him. He finished the 2021 season strong, proving his resilience. This event marked the final phase of his journey. He had overcome poverty. He had overcome being undrafted. He had overcome the pressure of his first contract, the challenge of his second team, and now he had faced down a politically motivated attack. All that was left to do was to cement his legacy as one of the greatest players on the planet, and that's exactly what he did. In the seasons that followed, Panarin was not just good. He was consistently breathtakingly elite. He became the undisputed heart and soul of the New York Rangers offense, the engine that made the entire team go. In the 2021-22 season, he put up a stunning 96 points. He followed that up with another dominant campaign in 2022-23, scoring 92 points. He was no longer just a star. He was a perennial MVP candidate, a player who made everyone around him better. But his ultimate on-ice triumph, his true masterpiece, came in the 2023-24 season. From the very first game, Panarin played with a new level of confidence and joy. He was electric every time he touched the puck, a constant threat to score from anywhere on the ice. He finished the season with career highs in both goals and points, scoring 49 goals and adding 71 assists for a staggering 120 points. It was one of the most dominant offensive seasons in the history of the storied Rangers franchise. He was once again named a finalist for the Hart Trophy as the league's MVP. This was the final vindication. The kid from the polluted mining town of Corkina, the player every team passed on in the draft, the runaway who bet on himself not once but twice, had now become one of the most valuable and celebrated players in the entire world. His $11.64 million salary, once seen as a massive risk by some, now looked like a bargain. He had reached the absolute pinnacle of the sport. His legacy is now twofold. On the ice, he's a shining example of how skill, creativity, and self-belief can triumph over a system that often prizes size and conformity. He's living proof that being undrafted is not a life sentence, but a motivating footnote. But his off-ice legacy is perhaps even more important. In a time when so many high-profile athletes chose silence, Artemi Panarin is a rare example of a Russian player who dared to speak his mind, to criticize a powerful regime, and to face the dangerous consequences head-on. He risked his and his family's safety to stand by his principles. His story is bigger than hockey. It's the story of a man who refused to be silenced, who bet on himself in every aspect of his life, and who won every single time. Artemi Panarin's story proves that betting on yourself beats betting on anyone else. The kid walked away from millions, came here, and built an empire just by wheeling and dealing. So what part of his story fired you up? Drop it in the comments, you beauties. We're already grinding on the next deep dive, so smash that subscribe button and don't let your grandma beat you to it, Wheels. And if you really want to back the squad, hit join and show us those hands aren't all stone and no finish.